We will start by prepping some 1 1/4 inch cardstock strips that we cut when we cut cardstock at the beginning. These are in the color that is our finishing color. And on the cutting guide, on the 4th page, up at the top it says joining box sides. Joining box sides. And here it lists 1 1/4 inch cardstock prep. And for each one of these, it tells you the length that you need to cut it. So I'm going to just start here with building one, and I'll cut that one to 10 1/4. So I have a 10 1/4, and I have a little piece left over that is 1 3/4 inches, and you can see that the next one down is 13 1/8. So I'll take one of my pieces that is 12 inches long, and I'll use some score tape to make it longer by attaching that side to it, and then I can cut that to 13 1/8. And just follow down with this list of lengths and cut your 1 1/4 inch strips to those lengths. There's one other one here, building 4, the bottom, that is 13 inches. So just use a scrap from one of the other ones and make that strip 13 inches. And get all of those cut to length. And as I cut them, I just use a pencil and lightly put the length on there. Now once you have all of your strips cut, you'll need your scoring board and your scorer. And each strip, you put the short end up at the top, and then we'll score it at 1 inch. So that's going to be the same for every strip. And if there's a join, like in the second strip, it should be up at the top when you do this. So go ahead and for these that are too long, just go as far as you can, pick it up, and then continue that score. And once I score them, I just flip them over so I know so they stay in order. And I'll score all of them at the 1 inch mark. So now that we've made the 1 inch score on each piece, we'll take each piece in turn, and I'm starting here with a 10 1/4, and I'll just double check. I'll double check up here at the top to make sure that is my 10 1/4 strip. And then it tells me that the left, we're going to make a score at the left at 1 3/4. Now the 1/4 inch score is up at the top. If there's a join, it should be on the left. So I'm just going to make one score according to what the chart tells me for each of my strips. Just double check your length. 1/4 inch score is up at the top. If there's a join, it should be at the left. Now that you have them all scored, we'll go ahead and reinforce those creases. So just take each one, our score, my 1/4 inch is up here at the top, and I'll just flip it over so that I can easily fold on that score line the long way, and then fold my tab and give each one of those reinforcement with my bone folder. Now that we've got our creases made, we can prep a little with score tape. I have this strip sitting so that the 1/4 inch side is towards me, but it's folded up this way, I think you can see. And I want to put score tape on the inside here. And when I put it on, I want to come just shy of that crease. And it will hang over a little bit, but I'll show you that it's really easy to trim that. So you'll go down the entire length of that crease. I have to pull this closer to myself so I can see it. When you get that on there, just flip it over. And I think you can see there's some white hanging off. And if you just slowly go with your craft knife, you can follow right along the edge of that cardstock. I'm just holding my fingers as I go along, and I can easily trim off any excess that I have. And that's how we'll prep each one of the strips. When you get to one that has a join, just fold that tab of the score tape up out of the way and continue to run a strip all the way along the 1/4 inch tab. Now, as luck would have it, I have marked the length on the side without the score tape, which is the good side, so I want to transfer that to the other side. And what I'm going to do, instead of just putting the measurement, is I'll put what building it's for. So like this is my 10 1/4 strip. It's just building 1. There isn't a top and bottom, but the 13 1/8, this is 3 tops. So I'm just writing it on that tab end, and then if I've got any pencil on the reverse side, I'll go ahead and erase it. And if you don't have a chalk pencil, just use a regular pencil so you can see it. Now we're ready to do some assembly, and I have started here with my strip that's marked for building 1, and I'll get out my baggie and I'll get out the 4 sides that go to make the box for building 1. So I have my 4 pieces here, and on the guide it tells us the order that they're going to go in. So I'm going to put a 3 1/8 in first, and then a 1 7/8, and a 3 1/8, and then the final 1 7/8. So I just like to line them up according to what it says there to start with. And then on my strip, I can see the score tape side. I'm going to just run some regular adhesive. You can just use a regular tape runner. This is a large one, and I just ran a strip. I think you can see the reflection. This one's not too straight. I can come back and fix it up a little bit. You just want a strip along each of those edges, and then when we put each one of these sides on, you can either use glue, or you can use, I'm going to just put some ATG on both ends. And you can see it glisten there. And the first one, its placement is you take that end and you fold it up square, and then you put this one butted right up there, and this edge should go right along that top edge. And then just put that down, and then take your next piece, run some adhesive along the 2 short edges, and butt that up right against that one. Again, watching that top edge. Do that for the 3rd one. And you'll have a little tab left over down here. Just run some tape adhesive right on that little tab. Line this on your craft mat, and put down your last side so that it's all in a line. Then flip that over and give it a good burnish. Now watch out when you're working, because you have some adhesive on this side, but I'm gonna kind of fold that up this way, and then I'm gonna take my bone folder, and I'll see where each one of those creases are. I'm just kind of reinforcing where it is. And then I'm going to fold on those creases. And it's also important to crease right there where that score tape is. So do that for each one of your creases. Just hold it so these pieces align, and squeeze that little tab. And then We can fold this end in. I'm just going to open it up like this for a second and put a little adhesive right like that. I think you can see the shine. And for any of these that only have 4 pieces, you can fold back this last side. Just watch that these edges are aligned down here towards the front, and then this will be another butt joint in between these 2 pieces if there are 4 sides. Go ahead and press that down and then take your bone folder on that last side. So now we have a little box that has tabs up here at the top. And I'm going to take my scissors, and on each one of these creases in the corner, I'm going to snip right down to that chipboard. Now that we've got that all put together, find the side that has the little join of the cardstock. That's going to be the ceiling side, so go ahead and write ceiling on there. And also put the building number. So off to the side I have my template so that I know which way my box should be oriented. And then we'll just set that aside. Let's do building number 3, which has 2 boxes. One has 5 sides, and the smaller one at the bottom has just 4 sides. So I'm keeping this sheet off to the side for reference, and I'll pull out all of my box pieces for both of these openings. So I've separated out my box sides, and I'll keep my tops here, and I'll put the bottom ones up there, and then I have my top piece here. And on the page, building 3 top, the first piece is going to be a 3 1/4, then a 2 7/8, then another 3 1/4, and then finally 2 1 3/4. This works the same way that we did before. I'll just remove this piece of score tape backing and run some of my tape along both of the long edges here. And then I'll run tape on the short edges of each piece as I put it in. Find this crease. And again, line this piece up with this crease standing up and the top edges, and the top edges aligned. And then put each piece on in order. I have all my pieces on, so I will watch out for this end that's sticky, and I'll give everything a good burnish. And then find my joins and use the edge of my bone folder on each one of those. And then again, we'll crease on each one. Keep this straight and pinch on that score tape. Repeat that for all of them. Once you've made all those creases, you can turn this around and put score tape on both sides of that last tab. Now this one has 5 pieces, so you still want to make a butt join here, but you'll have to do it kind of up in the air. You can't do it flat because there's 5 pieces to it. So just kind of hold it up in the air and make a butt join there. Watch the bottom edge of your cardstock right here by my thumb, and go ahead and put that last piece on, and then reach in there and give that a burnish. Then we'll make our little snips. Our snips should really go right in between where those creases are, or where the joins are. That's where those creases should be. Right up to the chipboard. Now here, there's really no need to say where the ceiling is, because it's obvious because it has the gable end, but you'll want to mark that it is for 3 and that it is the top. And then you can just carry on with the remainder of this list, putting things together just as I showed you. Make sure that you always, for any that are rectangles, that you mark the ceiling, and that you always mark what building it is and whether it is the top or the bottom. So here are all my little boxes made, and some of them I know I'm going to put the Tim Holtz typography in, and that's all of the 1-inch tall boxes, plus this one up here, which the sides are 1 inch tall. So I'm just going to put those 4 to the side. Also, in this last box, which is the one that's going in building 8, I'm not going to have something hanging. I'm going to put a little Christmas tree. So I'm going to take that one away. Now for all of these other ones, I'm going to have something hanging, so I want to punch a little hole in the top center to put a screw eye or hook in. So let's ignore this one with the gable, because we have to treat that one a little differently, and let's look at all these other ones that have that are rectangles. So we always want to make the hole, of course, in the ceiling, and the pieces are 1 inch deep here, so I'm going to make the hole halfway, so that'd be 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to center it left to right. So I'm going to flip this over so that the ceiling is facing my craft mat, and then I'll put each edge in turn, center it on a part of my craft mat in between 2 lines, and then I can make a little tick mark here on both sides to have a guideline. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then I'm just going to hold my ruler kind of on an edge here, and then I'll be able to measure in 1/2 inch from the back and line it up with those 2 tick marks that I made there, and I'll be able to figure out exactly where I need to put my hole. So when I did that, that's where my hole and my spacing for my hole is, and I'll just take my thin pointed awl and a mouse pad or something and punch that hole through there. And you don't have to go very deep, because the little screw eyes or screw hooks that we'll use, they don't have a very wide screw part on them, so you don't want to have a very big hole there at all. So go ahead and obviously you'll have to have your awl at a little bit of an angle, but it'll be fine. So now I've punched that hole, and I can erase these other tick marks. And I'll repeat that process for each of the other rectangular boxes, making sure I turn this over so that I'm working on the ceiling side and centering and punching that little tiny hole. Now for the niche that has a gable top, we need to reinforce this part up here because there's just paper right there in the center. And in the materials guide, it called for a little scrap of 3/4 by 2-inch lightweight chipboard, or you could use cereal box. And I'm just putting this on my scoreboard, and I'm going to score it at 1 inch, just right in half there. and then I can fold that on that crease. Then I'll go ahead and put some glue on the inside of this piece. And then I'm just using my craft mat to line up this building or this box and get it square here and just kind of hold it, and then I can put this little piece on here at the top. I'm putting it flush against the side that doesn't have tabs. I'll pick it up here in a second and show it to you. So it is flush against this back edge here that doesn't have any tabs. And I'll just hold that with some pressure for a few minutes. And then what we can do is just in that crease where the two ceiling parts meet, we'll measure a 1/2 inch from that back edge and just punch the hole right in that crease. So I think you can see that little tick mark I made, and I'll make sure when I put my awl in there that it's right in the crease. And now we have a hole that is reinforced on that gable niche. So now we're ready to insert the boxes into the side of each building. So just go to the bag and get out the side wall that you cut the opening in. And we're going to insert it with the tabs facing up into the front side. And just kind of take your time and gently, it's supposed to be a snug fit. And just don't push it in all the way. Go about, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch or so away from going all the way through. Now we're leaving these tabs up. We're not going to do anything with these tabs for a while. I can run a thin bead of glue right along the edge here. But before I do that, let me just show you the goal. The goal is to push this in after it's got glue on it so that the edge, the top edge of the box is flush with the top edge of the side. So I'm just going to run my little bead of glue around there. So now I have glue right along that edge on all 4 sides. I'm just going to go a little bit at a time, pushing that in until it becomes even. You can kind of feel when it's even. You might want to have a wet wipe or something handy. Just kind of make sure it's even all the way around. If you have glue on your hands, you'll want to get a wet wipe or something, because once you have it even, put a little pressure from the inside here, especially on the longer edges, just a little bit, so that it is holding tight against those edges. And just check that everything is nice and flush, and just set that aside to dry for a few minutes. Don't do anything with the tabs. Here's 3 front, and I have my 2 niches that go in there, and I'll just work on one at a time. Just put one in and then I'll put the other one in. Let's start with this one. Now this one I'm going, because I've got this extra piece of chipboard there, I'm going to feed this one in from the back side so that because that has a little extra thickness there. So I'll just feed that in. And again, the tabs are facing front, the same side that we see our ink on, and I've got them about 1/4 of an inch out, and it's the same process. Run that bead of glue along the edges and then fit that in. You can see if you need to put any pressure on the sides. I don't see any gaps here, so I think it'll be okay. Maybe right up in this corner I have a little bit of a gap, so I can put my thumb there after I put the glue on. Now just watch that you don't get any glue on this inside, so have a wet wipe or something handy to clean any glue off your fingers. So let the glue set up on that top one, and just work on another one. And once that glue is set up, you can come back and put the bottom one in, and just make sure you're always looking for where it says sealing. So that will be the process for putting all of these little boxes in there. Don't attach any of the tabs. Just make sure you get the edges flush here when you put them in. Now my boxes are dry, and before I fold the tabs over, there's one thing I want to take care of, and I think you can see right in each of these corners there's a little hole. And so I'm going to take a strip of my cardstock and cover up that hole. So let me show you how I do that. This is the scrap left over from cutting the 1 1/4" pieces that we used around the to join the edges of the box. I'm going to run a piece of 1/4" score tape down both of the long sides. Then I'll just use my ruler and cut that score tape off, that cardstock off even. And I find it best to put the ruler on the non-score tape side. Just butt it up right against that edge, and then it won't slide around. Now, when I do this, I like to get the backing kind of off and then make my little snips, because I have some non-stick scissors and I can always clean them off with some an alcohol rub, a little alcohol pad, and so that I don't have to keep removing little pieces of backing. And you'll see what I mean in a second. So I'm just going to cut a few pieces. They don't have to be any longer than a 1/2 inch. I just stack them up here on the edge of my scissors. And then I can take each one of these and I'll put it at an angle so that it covers up that little hole. You don't want to go past the intersection, but just cover up that little hole in the corner. And do that on each one of the corners and up here. Every time there's an intersection, just go ahead and put one in there so that you cover up that little hole. That one needs to come down a little bit further, and I'll get that in place. I'm going to do that on all of the little corners on all of my pieces. And then I'll just support that piece underneath with my fingers, and then I can give each one of those a little burnish. So now that I've got my corners all covered, I can remove my score tape backing from these places and go ahead and attach the tabs down and support them and give them a good burnish. So now you can see the benefit of using that extra wide strip to join the box sides together. It also allowed us to nicely finish off the front edges of each one of the niches. And I'll go ahead and repeat that process on all of the other building fronts. Once you get all the tabs burnished down around the openings, if you're having hanging ornaments and you punched a hole in some of your niches, go ahead and get out your little hooks and put them in. And if you only have little screw eyes, use some pliers and open them up to turn them into hooks. So it'll be much easier to have hooks than to have a closed loop there at the top. And when you put them in, have the opening for the hook facing front, and the front side is the side with the finished edges on here. So I'll go ahead and put my little hooks in. And then once you have each little hook in, go ahead and take a drop of glossy accents or diamond glaze and just put that on the top of that screw, just so it'll hold it in place. A little added insurance, and I just stand these upright until that has a chance to dry. For the back panels in my niches, I'm going to take a piece of black cardstock and color it with some Distress Oxide inks. I have Iced Spruce, Faded Jeans, and those will be the main colors. And then I'll also add a little Broken China in there as well. And I'm just going to use a kind of a swirly technique on this. I'm no expert at using these inks, but I think this gives a pretty good look to the back panels. Of course, you can choose to put whatever you want in there. And as long as you're not having, if you were to use pattern paper, if it's not directional, 9 by 12 should be sufficient to do it. You may even be able to get it out of a 8.5 by 11. So I'll just start coloring this paper. So this is my technique. First I put down some Faded Jeans kind of in random places, and then I'll fill it in with some Iced Spruce. And once I've filled in everything, I just kind of go back and forth blending with those two colors, and then at the end I'll come in and add a little Broken China just to brighten it up a little. So that's about all I'm going to do for now. It may be that after I cut out the pieces to go on the individual panels that a little additional coloring will be necessary. So I'm going to dry this off and then I'll be back. I'll just set this piece of paper aside and get out all of the little back panels from my baggies. So here are all of my panels, and I'm going to prep the edges with score tape. I'm going to put the score tape on the side that is the front of it. That's where we've got our writing. And then I will also just flip it over and put the building number on the back side, because once we put the paper on, of course, we won't be able to see the writing there. So just put score tape on all of the edges. So here are all of my panels with score tape attached, and I have written on the back of them what building they go to. And now I'll just take each one in turn. I'll turn this paper over and attach them to the back side, remove that score tape backing, and attach them down, and then just use my craft knife to cut them out. You do have plenty of paper here, but you do want to be kind of judicious and not leave a lot of space in between. We will need a section, like, I don't know, 3 by 3 or a large section that for building 5, which you may recall we haven't worked on yet. So I'll just cut each one of those out and put them aside. So I have all my pieces covered, and I of course burnished around the edges, and I have this piece left over which I'll just set aside. We will need it for when we do building 5. So the panels will go into the niche openings, and they will eventually sit flush against the back of the opening. And to attach them, we're going to use these little scraps of joining strips that we had, and if they're not enough, we'll get some more out. I think it's best to use something like that as opposed to trying to put wet glue in here. It just is, to me, it's too easy to get glue where you don't want to, and with all this distressing going on, I don't want any glue that I can't wipe away. So I'm just going to use these as tabs. So I'll zoom in and show you the process. So first, these were cut from joining strips, and to do this process, they're going to have to be turned so their score tape is inside, so just go ahead and do that. And then when you attach them, they don't have to go all the way to the length here. They can go, well, kind of close, but they don't have to go all the way. And I'll just trim a piece down here, and I'll remove the backing from one side only, and then I'm going to attach it to here, and I want the crease to be flush with this edge here. So just put it on there like so. And burnish that, and then we'll just flip that out of the way. And just do that on all of the edges that you have on all of the boxes. And if this isn't enough, just get out some more of your joining strips and use those as you need them. Just turn them inside out. So once you have all of the tabs on each of your sections, go ahead and turn it over. Just move the tabs kind of out of the way and put it flat on the table. If there's a hook at the top, tuck this back panel in underneath that hook and then press it down until it's on the surface. Most of them are a pretty snug fit. If they're not, just give it a little squeeze when you pick it up. And then you want to not have gaps, so I just squeeze it and put 2 tabs on in turn. Just kind of lightly push them in to begin with, and then go in the other direction again. You may need to give it a little bit of a squeeze and put these 2 tabs on. Once you have those tabs kind of lightly on, just turn it back over to this side and reach in and burnish along those edges really well. That'll make sure that panel is flat inside of there. And then you can turn it over to this side, burnish here and on all of the sides. So just repeat that for all of your walls. And then once you've completed all your burnishing, your niches will be complete.